Hiya crafters, Amy here with Amy's Wares, and I have an embossed sympathy card to share with you today. Now this is a new to me embossing folder. It's called Wheat Stems from Simon Says Stamp, and then there's with sympathy die from Kathy Zilski, also from Simon. I have a photo of the finished card to show you the direction that we're headed, but I am so in love with these products. I had to get them. I've seen so many crafters using them. I think Amy Rye Savvy and some others, and I just absolutely fell in love with this embossing folder, and I had to get it. So it also gave me an opportunity to use some of these gorgeous neutral colors, which are available in the minis now at Catherine Pooler. So super excited. I did end up pulling out one extra color that I didn't end up using. That second one here, that sand castle, I ended up not using that because it was a little more cool in color, and I felt like these other three worked better together for this design. So basically I'm starting with some simple ink blending. I'm going to use those three colors minus the sandcastle to create this warm kind of sunny brown look to go with the wheat embossing folder. And I am going to obviously turn this into a sympathy card. Here's where I realized, like, nope, I'm not going to use that one. But basically, these products worked so beautifully together, and I was really excited to pull them together into this card. Obviously, not to need a sympathy card. Nobody wants to need those, but they are something that I do recommend having on hand, because if you're troubled by a loss, then probably the last thing you want to worry about is the pressure of coming up with a card for that. So I definitely recommend having having sympathy cards on hand in your stash, ready to go when you need them, either for yourself or for someone else if you know someone else needs one. So basically I'm doing some very sloppy ink blending here. It doesn't look great, but the beautiful thing about Catherine Pooler is it does really kind of soak into the paper and kind of even out. And then also you will see I'm just kind of coming back over and working in layers, which also helps to make it a more smooth blend. But as you'll see in the design, there are a couple of things that I do that really do help mask any imperfections. So if you're still learning ink blending and maybe you're not great at it yet, then I would recommend these extra steps, which I'm about to show you. Now this die is from Altenew. It's a really cool kind of deckled edge, and you can see it's like not even sticking down whatsoever. This mint tape is like, nope, not happening. The reason being is there's just so much ink from my blending that the panel wasn't anywhere near dry. So I just kind of had to be careful with my die cutting. I was being very concise about centering the panel because I am using both portions. Now I flipped it over and I'm using some washi tape there just to hold it together, because I am going to run both pieces together through this embossing folder. Now these embossing folders from Simon Says Stamp are a little bit different than what I'm used to. They're not the same size, and they're also not the same thickness. So I did have to make sure I used the right sandwich, but I did want to emboss the panels together because I am going to use them, and I wanted the embossing design to continue through both panels, both the outline and both the border and the inner portion. So I'm carefully removing this washi tape. I don't want to rip it because, like I said, the panel was pretty saturated with ink. So I'm just being mindful not to tear this, even though it is just on the back. So now I have the embossing continued through both portions of the panel. And 8 years later, when I get this off the back, you'll see what I do next. But basically, I'm going to use some glue here, some tape runner, just to attach the outline portion down directly onto a card base. And this card base is 4¼ inches by 5½ so this will create the border. There won't be an additional white border. I'm going to lay that down directly flat on the card base. Then what I'll do is I'll pop up the center portion just to create some visual interest and dimension onto the card. So here I'm going to put some foam tape on the back just to pop that up. Another option would be, if you have some fun foam, either adhesive backed or regular, you could just do another panel die cut with that same die that you used to cut the panel, and then it would be even dimension all the way across the back. But I have this really big 2-inch foam tape that I got from Scrapbook, so I'm just going to use that just to pop this up, and I'm nestling it back within the border. So it's a perfect fit, but you will see it is popped up, so you see a little bit of white around the edges. Now here is an option if your ink blending is not great. So first of all, the embossing is going to take away from any imperfections just because it's going to create that dimension and that interest with the design itself. But if you're still not super pleased, then I recommend splatter. So this is a Yuli watercolor set. This is a really pretty gold watercolor, and I'm just using my water brush pen and an acrylic block just to put splatter all over the card front. So that's another way to mask any imperfections. Now here I have some, it's kind of like a more subdued metallic gold, and I am going to separate these dyes here, and I'm going to do some in white and some in the metallic gold. So I will do the shadow portion in the metallic gold and then the with sympathy in just some scrap white cardstock. I feel like this will go really well with the design. The gold will tie in with the gold splatter, and the white will be enough of a contrast to pop those letters up off that shadow layer. So I'm mindful not to lose my little tittle. I just put the little tittle stuck on the piece of tape there so I don't lose it. But I'm just going to pop this out, and then I will attach the word layers to the shadow layer. Now, if you aren't familiar, Kathy Zilski has some of the most amazing dies. She sells exclusively through Simon Says Stamp, but I just love the fonts that she uses. It's so clean and simple. It's just great. I love basically everything she makes. So be sure to check that out. I will link that in the video description box below. But I'm using some micro dots here just because they are a little bit fiddly and I don't want to deal with liquid glue oozing out. So these micro dots will allow me to attach these fiddly dies to the shadow layer. And I do have a little bit of time to wiggle around, and then when you're sure you have it in the right place, then just kind of press it down, brayer it, and then I'm using some liquid glue just to add that little tittle, just because it's easier than trying to put a micro dot on that little tiny tittle. So once I'm done with that, I'm trying to fiddle a little bit with my jewel picker tool, but I'm figuring out the placement here where I want this. I don't want to cover up the kind of top part of the wheat, so I decided to attach this lower on the composition. I'm going to use liquid glue because this back shadow layer is kind of nice and thick and I don't have to worry about it oozing out. Just going to put that right down on the bottom, press it down and make sure it sticks with all that texture. And then I'm going to add a little bit of blingage to the card. I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but first I have this Midas. It's like a gold color. I can't remember what brand this pen is. I'll link it below, but it's just adding a little bit of visual interest onto the white lettering. It adds a little bit of additional gold shimmer onto that die cut here. So that's an optional step. Obviously skip that if you don't want it. But I have these flat back gold little pearls that are from, I think, Pink Fresh Studio, and I'm just going to put those down in a smattering in odd numbers on the composition. So I have some on that raised center layer and then some also on the border, so it gives it some more interest. So again, using my jewel picker tool and some liquid glue. I have even numbers in total, but you can also do that as long as you have odd numbers in the cluster. So I have 2 clusters of 3, and that's going to finish the card. So I'm so pleased with how this turned out. If you enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing. Like I said, I will link everything in the video description box below if you want to check out any of that. But thank you so much for spending time with me today. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you next time.